I'll never forget the moment the fire alarm went off at my brother's wedding. Not the actual flames. There weren't any, but the panic, the stampede of guests in rented suits and pastel dresses, the way the cake toppled off its stand and splattered across the dance floor. In the chaos, someone's shoe flew past my head. That's how my story starts. With a mess, a shock, and me standing in the middle of it all, wondering if I'd ever be allowed to just exist in a room without being the reason people whisper. But this isn't about my brother's wedding. That was just the prelude, the moment that set everything else in motion. Because after that, I stopped going to family events. I stopped trying to fit in, until the day I got the invitation in the mail. Heavy cardstock, my name spelled out in perfect calligraphy, a single line in my little brother's handwriting. Eli, I want you in the front row at my graduation. I almost didn't go. The last time I'd been home, my aunt had pulled me aside and whispered, it's fine if you want to bring a friend, but maybe keep things low-key. Low-key, like my life was a volume knob she could turn down. I'd smiled, nodded, and left early, driving all night back to Chicago, the city where nobody cared who I loved or how I dressed. But this was different. This was for Jamie. He'd always been the only one in my family who didn't flinch when I talked about my boyfriend, who didn't change the subject when I mentioned pride, who sent me memes and late-night texts just to check in. So I bought a new shirt, the kind that made me feel sharp and unbreakable, and drove the 12 hours back to Indiana. The morning of the ceremony, the gym was packed. Balloons bobbed against the ceiling, parents jostled for seats, and the air buzzed with the kind of nervous energy that only comes from too many people pretending they're not judging each other. I found my name on the guest list, but when I tried to take my seat in the reserved section, a woman with a headset blocked my path. "Sorry, this area is for immediate family only," she said, her voice clipped, eyes sliding over my rainbow pin before landing on the couple behind me. "I'm immediate family," I said, holding up my invitation. She didn't even look at it. "You'll need to move to general seating, or security will have to escort you out." People were watching now. I could feel the heat of their stares, the way their conversation slowed, the way someone's camera phone hovered in my direction. I thought about arguing, about making a scene, but Jamie's voice echoed in my head. "Don't give them a reason, Eli. Just be there for me." So I stepped back, one pace, then another. The woman nodded, satisfied, and turned away. I stood by the exit, hands shoved deep in my pockets, trying not to let the shame show on my face. I could see my mom in the third row, pretending not to notice me. My dad was nowhere in sight. That's when I saw them. A group of guys in matching blue jackets, sitting together near the front. They looked out of place, too old to be students, too young to be professors. One of them caught my eye and nodded, just once, like he understood exactly what was happening. The ceremony started. Names were called, diplomas handed out, applause rising and falling like waves. I watched Jamie walk across the stage, his grin so wide I thought his face might split in two. He looked out into the crowd, searching, and for a second I thought he wouldn't see me. But then our eyes met, and he smiled even bigger, lifting his diploma like a trophy. After the ceremony, as the crowd surged toward the exits, I tried to slip away. But the woman with the headset was waiting for me, flanked by 2 security guards. "Sir, we need you to leave the premises," she said, her voice loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. I opened my mouth to protest, but before I could speak, the group of men in blue jackets stood up. All at once. The tallest one walked over, his steps deliberate, his gaze steady. "That's Eli," he said, his voice calm but unyielding. "He's with us." The woman hesitated. The guards looked at each other, unsure. The man reached into his pocket and pulled out a badge. Not a police badge, but something official, something that made the guards step back. "He's family," the man said. "And he's not going anywhere." The room went quiet. People stared. My mom finally looked up, her eyes wide with something like fear, or maybe pride. I couldn't tell. Jamie pushed through the crowd, his cap askew, his face flushed. "That's my brother," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "And if he's not welcome here, then neither am I." For a moment, nobody moved. Then, slowly, the crowd parted. The woman with the headset stepped aside. The guards melted away. Jamie grabbed my hand and pulled me into the center of the room, right where I belonged. And just like that, the mess was over. The shock faded. I stood in the middle of the gym, surrounded by strangers, but for the first time in a long time, I felt seen. That was just the beginning. If you told me a year ago that I'd end up in a standoff with security at my own brother's graduation, I would have laughed you out of the room. But there I was, still reeling from the adrenaline of being pulled into the spotlight, my hand locked in Jamie's, surrounded by a sea of faces, some curious, some cold, some quietly cheering us on. Jamie squeezed my hand, his palms sweaty but determined. "You okay?" he whispered. I nodded, but my heart was still pounding in my ears, drowning out the buzz of the crowd. The woman with the headset had vanished, but I could still feel her judgment lingering in the air. My mom gave me a look I couldn't decipher, half apology, half worry. The blue-jacketed men who'd stood up for me earlier had melted back into the crowd, but their presence lingered, a silent shield. Jamie tugged me toward the exit, but I stopped. "I'm not running," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Not this time." He grinned, a flash of the kid I used to babysit, the one who'd once declared, "Eli, you're my hero," after I fixed his broken skateboard with duct tape and hope. "Good," he said, "because I'm not letting you." We made our way through the crowd, people parting like we were Moses and the Red Sea. Except instead of awe, there was confusion, curiosity, and in a few faces something like respect. I caught the eye of a woman in a navy dress, her gaze soft and understanding. She gave me a small nod, and I nodded back, grateful for the silent support. Outside, the sun was too bright, the air too sharp. Jamie pulled off his cap and ran a hand through his hair. "I'm sorry about what happened in there," he said. I thought things would be different this time." I shrugged. "You don't have to apologize for them." He shook his head. "No, I do. Because I want you here. I want you to be part of this. And if they can't see that," he broke off, frustration etched into his features. I put a hand on his shoulder. "Hey, you did great. You walked that stage like you owned it. That's what matters." He smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "You know, I almost didn't invite you. That stung more than I expected." "Why?" He looked away, scuffing his shoe against the sidewalk. "Because I was scared. Not of you. Never of you. But of them. Of what they'd say. Of how they'd look at you. At us." I swallowed hard. "Yeah, I get it." A silence settled between us, heavy and honest. Then Jamie squared his shoulders. "But I did invite you, and I'm glad I did. Because you belong here, Eli, whether they like it or not." Before I could answer, a voice called out from behind us. "Hey, you two." We turned. The tallest of the blue-jacketed men jogged over, his stride easy but purposeful. Up close, he looked even more imposing, broad-shouldered, with a jaw that could cut glass and eyes that missed nothing. He stuck out a hand. "Name's Marcus. Saw what happened in there. That was, well, it shouldn't have gone down like that." I shook his hand, surprised by the strength of his grip. "Thanks for stepping in." He shrugged. "Didn't do it for thanks. Did it because it was right. Too many people get pushed aside for no good reason. Figured it was time someone stood up." Jamie grinned. "You guys Navy or something?" Marcus laughed, a deep, rolling sound. "Close. Firefighters. Chicago. We're in town for a conference. Figured we'd catch the ceremony since my nephew's graduating." He jerked a thumb over his shoulder where the other men were clustered, talking quietly. "Saw the whole thing. Figured you could use some backup." I felt a lump rise in my throat. "Yeah, I guess I did." He clapped me on the shoulder, nearly knocking the wind out of me. "Anytime, Mun. You ever need anything, you find us. We'll look out for our own." Jamie nudged me. "Told you weren't alone." The rest of the day passed in a blur. Photos, hugs, awkward conversations with relatives who didn't quite know what to say. My mom finally approached me, her eyes red-rimmed. "I'm sorry, Eli," she whispered. I should have done more. I hugged her, letting the apology settle between us. "You're here now. That's enough." As the sun set, Jamie and I sat on the hood of my car, watching the sky turn gold and pink. He leaned his head on my shoulder. "You think it'll ever get easier?" I thought about all the times I've been told to sit at the back, to keep quiet, to make myself smaller. I thought about Marcus and his crew, about the woman in the navy dress, about Jamie's stubborn, unbreakable love. Yeah, I said finally. I think it will. Maybe not today. Maybe not tomorrow. But someday. He smiled, and for the first time all day, I felt hope bloom in my chest. That night, as I drove back to my apartment, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. This is Marcus. If you ever need a place to belong, you've got one with us. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. I stared at the message, a grin spreading across my face. Maybe the world wasn't as lonely as I thought. Maybe, just maybe, it was finally starting to change. You'd think after a day like that, the world would just snap back to normal. But it didn't. Not for me, not for Jamie, and not for anyone who saw what happened in that gym. Sometimes, a single moment cracks the surface, and everything that's been hiding underneath starts to show. The next morning, I woke up to a phone vibrating off my nightstand. My inbox was flooded. Texts from Jamie, missed calls from Mom, even a message from Marcus. You good? Let us know if you need anything. I scrolled through, half expecting to see something ugly, but what I found was different. There were messages from people I barely knew, classmates, old neighbors, even a teacher from high school. Some just wrote, saw what happened, proud of you. Others shared their own stories, how they'd been pushed aside, how someone had stood up for them, or how they wished they'd spoken up when it mattered. I met Jamie for breakfast at a diner on Main Street, the kind of place where the coffee's always burnt and the waitresses know everyone's business. He looked tired but lighter, like the weight he'd been carrying had finally shifted. Dad called, he said, stirring sugar in his mug. He saw the video, said he was sorry for not being there, said he was proud of us. He grinned. We're right. I smiled, feeling something loosen in my chest. Maybe things are changing. Jamie nodded. You know, after you left last night, people wouldn't stop talking about it. Even the principal came over and apologized. Said he'd review the policies for next year. He made air quotes, rolling his eyes. Better late than never, I said. We ate in silence for a while, the clatter of dishes and the low hum of conversation filling the gaps. I watched Jamie, saw the way he held himself, taller, more sure. He'd always been brave, but now he looked fearless. After breakfast, I walked him to his car. As he got in, he turned to me. You're coming to the party tonight, right? I hesitated. You sure? He grinned. Wouldn't be a party without you. That evening, I pulled up to a house packed with cars and laughter spilling out the open windows. I took a deep breath, smoothed my shirt, and walked in. The room went quiet for a split second when I entered, but then someone shouted, Eli, and the spell broke. People clapped me on the back, offered me drinks, asked questions. For the first time in years, I felt like I belonged. Marcus and his crew showed up, too, still in their blue jackets, still looking out for me. They stuck close, introducing themselves to everyone, telling stories that made the whole room laugh. Marcus pulled me aside at one point, his face serious. You did good yesterday, he said. A lot of people would have walked away. I shrugged. Didn't feel like I had a choice. He smiled. That's what makes you different. As the night wore on, I found myself outside on the porch, the cool air relief after the heat of the party. Jamie joined me, 2 sodas in hand. You know, he said, handing me a can, I think we started something. I looked at him, surprised. What do you mean? He leaned against the railing, staring out at the street. People saw what happened. They're talking about it. Maybe next time, someone else won't have to stand alone. I thought about that, about all the times I'd felt invisible, all the times I'd wish someone would notice, would care. Maybe this was how it started, not with a speech or a protest, but with a single act of defiance, a single moment of kindness. Before I left, Jamie hugged me tight. Don't disappear again, okay? I promised I wouldn't. Driving home that night, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Not just for me, but for everyone who'd ever been told to sit at the back, to keep quiet, to make themselves small. Maybe, just maybe, things were finally starting to change. And as I pulled into my driveway, my phone buzzed again. Another message from Marcus. Your family now. Don't forget it. I smiled, the words settling over me like a promise. You'd think the world would move on after a single act of courage, but sometimes it's that one moment that ripples out, changing everything in its wake. The next week back in Chicago, my phone kept buzzing. Old friends, strangers, even a local news reporter who'd heard about what happened at Jamie's graduation. I ignored most of it, but I couldn't ignore the way I felt. Lighter, braver, like I'd finally stopped hiding from myself. Jamie called every night, his voice buzzing with excitement. "People keep asking about you," he said. "Even Coach Harris wants you to come talk to the team." I laughed, picturing the old football coach who'd once told me to run it off when I came out and got shoved in the hallway. "Maybe the world's catching up," I said. But not everyone was on board. My aunt left a voicemail. "You know, Eli, you made quite the scene. Maybe next time just blend in." I deleted it without listening twice. For the first time, I didn't care what she thought. A few days later, Marcus texted, "Meet us at O'Malley's. 7 p.m., don't be late." I hesitated. Bars weren't really my thing, and I'd never been to O'Malley's, a firefighter haunt on the south side. But curiosity won out. When I walked in, the place was packed. Firefighter memorabilia on the walls, old photos, a jukebox playing Springsteen. Marcus and his crew were at a corner booth, laughing over burgers and fries. They waved me over, making space. Marcus grinned, pushing a soda my way. "No pressure, man. Just wanted you to know you're one of us now." I looked around, surprised at how easy it felt. These were guys who'd seen the worst the world had to offer, but they treated me like I belonged. No questions, no side eyes, just acceptance. Then Marcus leaned in, voice low. "We saw what happened at the graduation. You didn't back down. That matters." I shrugged. Didn't feel brave. Just tired of being pushed aside. "That's the point," he said. "Sometimes standing your ground is the bravest thing you can do." Later that night, as I walked home, I replayed the scene in my head, Jamie grabbing my hand, the crowd parting, the quiet respect. I realized I wasn't just standing up for myself. I was standing up for every kid who'd ever been told to sit down, shut up, or hide who they were. The next weekend, Jamie showed up in Chicago, a duffel bag slung over his shoulder. "Thought I'd crash here for a bit," he said, grinning. We spent the weekend exploring the city. Pizza in Wicker Park, a walk along the lake, a late-night drag show where Jamie cheered louder than anyone. On Sunday, we sat on my fire escape, watching the city lights flicker. Jamie turned to me, serious for once. "You know, you changed things for me. For a lot of people." I shook my head. "I just wanted a seat at your graduation." He nudged me. "Yeah, but you got a whole room to stand up. That's bigger than you think." We sat in silence, the city humming below. For the first time, I let myself believe it. Maybe I really had started something. Maybe I wasn't alone anymore. And as the night deepened, I promised myself I wouldn't go back to hiding. Not now. Not ever again. You never really know what a single act of courage will set in motion until you're living in the aftermath. That's what I learned in the weeks after Jamie's graduation. The day the world seemed to tilt on its axis, just for a moment, and let a little more light in. It didn't take long for word to spread. Someone had filmed the whole thing. The confrontation, the crowd parting, Jamie grabbing my hand and refusing to let go. The video hit social media, and suddenly I was getting messages from people I hadn't seen since high school, from strangers in cities I'd never visited. Some were kind, thanking me for standing tall, for not backing down. Others weren't so nice, but I'd learned by now how to let those voices slide off me like rain on a windshield. What surprised me most was how many people wanted to talk, not just about what happened, but about what it meant. To them, to their families, to the places they called home. I started hearing from kids who'd never come out, parents who didn't know how to support their children, even teachers who wanted to make their schools safer. It was overwhelming, but it felt important. Like maybe, for once, I could use my story to help someone else find their voice. Jamie was loving it. He'd always had a flair for the dramatic, and now he was fielding interview requests, giving speeches at his college orientation, and even planning a panel on inclusion with Marcus and his firefighter crew. "You started something, Eli," he told me one night over the phone. "I'm just keeping the fire going." But not everyone was celebrating. My aunt sent another voicemail, this one sharper, her words clipped and cold. "You've embarrassed the family. I hope you're happy." My mom called to apologize for her, but I told her not to bother. I wasn't living for their approval anymore. Work got weird, too. My boss pulled me aside, asking if I'd be comfortable speaking at the company's Pride event. I hesitated, but then I remembered how it felt to stand in that gym, surrounded by strangers, and I said yes. The day of the event, I stood in front of a packed conference room. Coworkers, managers, even a few people from HR who'd never spoken to me before. My hand shook, but my voice didn't. I spent a long time trying to make myself small, I told them, trying to fit into spaces that were never built for me. But I'm done shrinking. I hope you are too. Afterward, a young intern approached me, eyes shining. Thank you, she whispered. I needed to hear that. Back home, Jamie and I started something new. We launched an online group for LGBTQ plus youth and allies in our hometown, a place where people could share their stories, ask questions, and find support. Marcus and his crew joined, too, offering mentorship and advice. It was messy, chaotic, and sometimes heartbreaking, but it was real, and it mattered. One night, as I was scrolling through messages, I got a DM from a guy named Chris. He was a senior at Jamie's old high school, struggling to come out to his family. I saw your story, he wrote. It gave me hope. I just wanted to say thanks. I stared at the screen, feeling the weight of his words. I wrote back, you're not alone. You never were. The next day, Jamie called, his voice buzzing with excitement. Guess what? The school board wants to meet with us. They want to talk about making graduation more inclusive. No more reserved sections. No more gatekeeping. Everyone gets a seat. I laughed, feeling a surge of pride. Looks like we really did start something. As summer turned to fall, the world kept spinning. There were setbacks, people who didn't understand, who didn't want to change. But there were victories, too. Small ones, quiet ones, the kind that add up over time. And through it all, I kept reminding myself, stand tall. Keep going. Be someone you'd be proud to look in the eye. Because sometimes the fire you start is the one that lights the way for you and for everyone who comes after. The thing about change is it doesn't happen quietly. It rattles doors, stirs up dust, and sometimes it brings out the worst in people before it brings out the best. That's what I learned the month after Jamie and I started our online group. At first, it felt like we were building something real. Every day, more people joined. Kids from our old high school, parents with questions, even teachers who wanted to do better. Marcus and his firefighter crew became regulars in the chat, sharing stories about teamwork, resilience, and what it means to have someone's back no matter what. We hosted video calls, answered late-night messages, and tried to make everyone feel seen. But then the backlash started. It was subtle at first. A few nasty comments on our posts, a couple of emails from people using fake names, telling us to stop making a scene. I'd seen it before, growing up gay in Indiana. The way people would smile to your face, but whisper behind your back. But this time it felt different. This time I wasn't alone. One night, Jamie called me, his voice tight. Someone vandalized the school, he said. They spray-painted slurs on the gym wall. About us. About the group. My stomach dropped. Are you okay? I'm fine, he said, but I could hear the tremor in his voice. The principal called the cops. They're investigating, but you know how it is. I did. I remembered what it felt like to be the target, to wonder if you were safe in your own hometown. But I also remembered the feeling in that gym, the moment the crowd parted and Jamie pulled me into the center of the room. I wasn't going to let fear win this time. We're not shutting down the group, I said. If anything, we need to make it bigger. Jamie laughed, shaky but real. That's what I was hoping you'd say. We decided to organize a community meeting, open to anyone, allies included. Marcus offered to host it at the firehouse, and the crew promised to keep things safe. The night of the meeting, I stood at the front of the room, my palms sweating, my heart pounding. I looked out at the crowd, teachers, parents, students, even a few people I'd never seen before. Some faces were wary, others hopeful. I told my story. Jamie told his. Marcus talked about brotherhood, about what it means to run toward the fire instead of away from it. We talked about dignity, about how everyone deserves a seat at the table or a spot in the front row. When we finished, the room was quiet. Then a woman in the back stood up. She was older, her hair pulled back in a tight bun. My grandson is gay, she said. He's scared to come out. But seeing you two up there, it gives me hope. Thank you. Others spoke up, too. Some with stories of pain, some with stories of pride. By the end of the night, the fear that had hung over us felt lighter, shared among many instead of carried by a few. Of course, not everyone was happy. There were more nasty messages. Someone tried to dox me, posting my address online. For a few days, I looked over my shoulder every time I left my apartment. But then Marcus showed up at my door, two of his crew with him. "You're not alone," he said. "We've got you covered." That night, we sat on my stoop, talking about everything and nothing. I realized then that courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was showing up anyway, even when you were scared. It was letting yourself be seen and letting others see you. As fall settled in, the group kept growing. The school board passed a new policy. No more reserved sections at graduation, no more gatekeeping. Everyone got a seat. The vandalism stopped, replaced by posters for our group, rainbow stickers on lockers, and teachers wearing pins that said, "You belong." Jamie called me one night, his voice bright. "We did it, Eli. We made a difference." I smiled, feeling the truth of it settle in my bones. We had, and we weren't done yet. When I look back on it now, I realized the real story wasn't about one graduation or one act of defiance. It was about what came after, the ripples, the reckonings, and the quiet, stubborn hope that kept us moving forward. The weeks after the school board meeting were a blur. Our online group kept growing, and the firehouse meetings became a regular thing. Sometimes packed, sometimes just a handful of us, but always honest. Jamie was thriving at college, sending me updates about new friends and professors who actually listened. Marcus and his crew checked in often, sometimes with a simple, "You good?" and sometimes with an invitation to grab burgers and talk about everything but the weight we carried. But there was pushback too. Some people in town still grumbled, still sent angry emails, still tried to make us feel small. I'd be lying if I said it didn't get to me. Some nights, I lay awake replaying old doubts, wondering if we'd made things harder for the next kid who just wanted to be seen. Then, one afternoon, I got a message from Chris, the high school senior who'd written me months ago. "I came out to my parents," he wrote. "It wasn't easy, but I did it. I told them about you, about the group." My mom cried, but she hugged me. My dad just nodded, but he didn't walk away. "Thank you for helping me find my voice." I sat with that message for a long time. I thought about all the times I'd stood at the back of a room, all the times I'd let shame or fear decide where I belonged. And I realized, every time we stand up, every time we refuse to be pushed aside, we make it easier for someone else to do the same. That fall, Jamie invited me back to Indiana for the school's first truly open graduation. No reserved sections, no gatekeepers, just families and friends side by side. I almost said no. The old fear was still there, whispering that maybe I didn't belong. But then I remembered Marcus's words, "You're family now. Don't forget it." So I went. The gym was packed, the air buzzing with excitement and nerves. I sat in the front row, Jamie at my side, surrounded by people who'd learned, sometimes the hard way, what it means to stand up for each other. There were new faces, old friends, and even a few of the teachers who'd once looked right past me. When the ceremony ended, Jamie pulled me into a hug. "Look around, Eli," he said. "This is what you started." I looked in, I saw it. Not just a room full of people, but a community, a place where no one had to stand alone. Later, as the crowd thinned and the lights dimmed, I found myself at the edge of the stage, watching parents and kids linger, taking photos, laughing, crying. I thought about the journey, about the mess and the shock and the stubborn hope that refused to die. I thought about the moments I'd almost given up and the people who'd pulled me back. If you'd told me a year ago that I'd be here, front row, unafraid, surrounded by family in every sense of the word, I wouldn't have believed you. But here I was, and I'd earned every inch of that seat. Looking back, I know I didn't do it alone. It took a brother's love, a crew's loyalty, and a community's willingness to change. I learned that courage isn't about never being afraid. It's about showing up anyway, about standing tall even when your voice shakes. I learned that sometimes the fire you start is the one that lights the way for others, and that the room will stand for you. Not because you demanded it, but because you showed them how. If you were in my shoes, if you found yourself standing at the edge of a room that wasn't built for you, with the chance to step forward or stay silent, what would you do to make sure the next person never has to stand alone? How would you claim your seat in the front row?